Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Medina, and I'm the COO and co-founder of Results for America. Thanks for joining us for today's session, developed in collaboration with our partners at Bloomberg Philanthropies and the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Today's session is focused on helping city and town leaders like all of you navigate the application process for two federal grant programs, the Federal Low or No Emission Grant Program and the Buses and Bus Facilities Grant Program. And when taken together, these two grant programs represent a $1.5 billion opportunity to modernize your municipal bus fleets. We'll be reviewing key changes to these programs this year, what those changes mean for your applications and your projects, and how you can put your best foot forward. Now, that's whether you're applying for the first time for these funds or whether you're adjusting to new federal rules related to these grant programs. But before we get started, please take a moment to respond to our Zoom poll right in front of you right now. This will help ensure that we are providing you the best support possible as you navigate grant applications and project implementations. Give you a few seconds to take a look at that, please. Okay, thank you for that feedback. I'm now pleased to welcome Brant Hertenstein. He's the program manager at the Electrification Coalition, and he'll be walking us through the new grant application process and answer any questions any of you may have. Brant, over to you.
Thank you very much. As David said, my name is Brant Hertenstein, and I am a program manager at the Electrification Coalition. I have about 20 slides in about 20 minutes, so I will probably be speaking quickly, and I want to make sure that we get all of the content from previous years and then the new information that we have for this year. So if we could move forward on next couple of slides, I do want to quickly go over what the Electrification Coalition is. We are a nonprofit coalition that develops and implements a broad set of strategies to facilitate the widespread adoption of electric vehicles to overcome the economic, public health, and national security challenges that stem from America's dependence on oil. Next slide. So I'm really excited to talk about this grant because this is the first time in the Trump administration where there has been funding available and opened for electric vehicles and electric vehicle infrastructure. So this came about last month in May, and it has a deadline of July 14th, 2025. The FCA does recommend that you submit your application 72 hours prior in case there's anything that goes awry. We will find out pretty quickly who wins the awards. It's going to be about 2 months or 2 or 3 months. And in September 2025 is when the expected awardees are going to happen. And then from that date, from the notice of award, it's going to be 3 fiscal years where is essentially your period of performance or where you're going to purchase them. I do know that, within the FTA, they want these to go quickly. So if you could obligate those funds within a year, that's going to help you out in terms of your total application. The total grant award is $1.5 billion. This is very similar to what the previous 3 years are. So $1.1 billion is going to the low or no emission program, and then the remaining 400 approximately is going to the bus and bus facilities program. For the low and no emissions program, these fuel types include EVs, compressed natural gas, liquid natural gas, propane, a hybrid electric gas combination, hybrid electric diesel combination, and hydrogen fuel cell. For bus and facilities program, it's all fuel types that are considered. Next slide. So as I alluded to, this is right in line with what we've seen over the last 3 years of this funding. This is supercharged by the bipartisan infrastructure law. So even though this has been a long-standing program, we have seen over $1 billion the last 3 years, and this is the 4th year out of the 5 where there's funding allocated. So this goes to fiscal year 2026. So the expectation is that we may see the similar amount of funding next year. Next slide. So who is eligible? So designated recipients are eligible, and that means recipients that have been designated by the state governor or their designee to receive and or suballocate funding. It goes to the states, including territories and Washington, D.C. It goes to local government entities and federally recognized tribes one of the things I do want to point out is that all projects in rural areas must be submitted by a state, either individually or as a part of a consolidated state application, except for tribes. And then regional entities and states can also submit on behalf of several local governments. For for tribes, I do want to point out that there are 6 evaluation criteria, and those criteria are very similar from last year. But there is a streamlined approach for tribes, especially for those requesting less than $1 million in federal funding. They only have to complete the narrative responses in the application for demonstration of need and local financial commitment criteria. Tribes do have to submit a zero emission fleet transition plan if they are going after zero emission buses or zero emission facilities. They must also provide a partial response to the project implementation strategy criteria, consisting of a project timeline and a discussion of the proposed partner's qualification, if that's applicable. Eligible projects, very similar to the previous years. It's replace, rehabilitate, purchase, or lease transit buses or related equipment. Same thing goes for the construction and lease of bus-related facilities. Rehabbing of improved existing facilities to accommodate low or zero emission buses, incidental costs to the acquisition or construction of a facility, and then workforce development. Next slide, please. So ineligible projects, just as important, they're all non-public transportation projects. So those that have vehicles that they think that they want school buses for, inter-facility shuttles. When I think of inter-facility shuttles, I think of airports. Services not open to the general public, so anything that doesn't have a fixed route to the general public is ineligible. These are also primarily implementation and construction grants, so planning and design is not eligible. Prototype or demo vehicles, not eligible. Anything that you have spent money on previously for a project, not eligible. And then mobility management is also not eligible. Next slide, please. So just like in prior years, this is very similar in terms of cost share. So most of your project allocation is going to be 80% is going to be funded by the federal government, and you're going to have a 20% cost share. And that's going to be for most of them. There is a slight escalation for percentages for people with disabilities. So vehicles that are ADA accessible, that'll
Yeah.
go up to 85%, and then 90%.
I saw
I don't want to be muted. I think I'm back. 90% of the related facilities and equipment to make facility accessible to people with disabilities. So if you're building a facility and you have a particular port where you have an ADA ramp, that would be 90%. But the rest of the facility, if it doesn't coincide with making a facility accessible for disabilities, that would still be 80%. So you do have to itemize that in your budget. This is also stackable with non-federal funds. I primarily think of elective pay or direct pay. Again, that's kind of a sensitive subject right now as it's going through Congress. But as of now, you can still braid those non-federal funds with this federal funds in terms of your overall budget. Next slide. So as I mentioned, there's 6 evaluation criteria. Next slide, please. That goes along with this, and this is how it's going to be scored. I'm not going to go through every single one of these in detail. I hope that you go through the notice of funding opportunity to go through these, but I do want to just call out on the demonstration of benefits. If you, for some reason, are going to put in multiple applications, one for Low-No and another one for bus and bus facilities. There are different criteria for each of them, so you need to properly evaluate them. Low-No still has that reducing energy consumption, harmful emissions, and direct carbon emissions that you have to discuss. The bus is more on the modernizing systems, improving safety, and enhancing access and mobility. The rest of the evaluation criteria are very, very similar. Here's where the main differences are for the additional considerations. They're somewhat similar as last year, but there are new things to this NOFO, and I think that it's really important that we assess those. So I do want to talk about geographic diversity is going together. So they want this money spread out across the country. The diversity in transit system sizes. So they want transit systems that are small, medium, and large. They also look at it from demographic of urban, small urban, rural, and tribal. And then they also want to know if you've been previously successful in award management. Hopefully we'll hear from our speakers today about what other previous grants that they've won to incorporate that into your NOFO. But if you've won other federal grants, that is of use for the reviewers. If you look off to the left-hand side, there is for the bus program, this is a statute, minimum of 15% of amount awarded to be directed to rural areas. This is pretty consistent. And for the low-no program, a minimum of 25% awarded to low emission projects. This is also a statute. Something I did want to call out specifically within the NOFO, it states, and when I say NOFO, I mean Notice of Funding Opportunity. It says within the low-no program, so that minimum of 25% of low emission projects, FTA intends to prioritize low emission projects over zero emission projects to the maximum extent permitted by law. So when we talk about that extent permitted by law, what we know is that there is a minimum of 25% awarded for low emission projects. That's always been the case. We don't know how that 75% is going to be allocated, the remaining 75%. We just know that that has been written in, and that is something new to the overall conversation of the NOFO this year. Next slide. If you are doing a zero emission bus or facility application, you must have a zero emission fleet transition plan. Within that transition plan, you have to include these 6 criteria. If you don't have a fleet transition plan, you can create one. Sometimes these can be for smaller transit agencies. This can be as little as 2 pages. However, bigger fleets are going to need to cover each of these criteria in order to satisfy the requirements. If you do not submit this as part of your application, you will not receive funding for your zero emission application. Next slide, please. So this is where the new things come in for the overall notice of funding opportunity. These are the administration priorities. The first one is opportunity zones. So this was in previous years. This was in fiscal year of 2019 and 2020. We did not see this in 21 through 24. We're seeing it now in 2025. Applicants must describe in detail in their supplemental form. Again, these all need to be in your supplemental forms whenever you're writing out your application. Applicants must describe in detail how projects support public transportation services and qualified opportunity zones. Opportunity zones are designated. You can go online and figure out which, what census tracts are opportunity zones. You need to identify those census tract numbers in the areas of performance or wherever your vehicles are going. Next slide. Cost-effective vehicle procurement. Now, we saw this last year in 2024. There is a new part of it. So what happened before was in 2024, they talked about a joint procurement with at least 3 transit agencies totals with a common specification will have priority, and partnering with an OEM using a standard model without customization will also put your application as a priority. New to this year is committing to procuring vehicles from a state schedule without customization options. I think you'll see on this slide that customization is, I'm going to say, frowned upon. Really, we want OEMs to be able to get these buses out as quickly as possible. The more customization that you add to a vehicle, the harder it is to make, the longer it takes to make, and we're trying to avoid that. And I think it's abundantly clear that we're trying to avoid that. Next slide. Strengthening the U.S. vehicle manufacturing industry. This is also very similar. Commit to using advance payments. Advance payments are payments made to the contractor, in this case, an OEM, before the contractor incurs costs, or you can do a commitment to using progress payments, which are payments made to that same contractor prior to completion to all the contract work. And then finally, describing how those contracting terms are going to expedite payments to OEMs. Essentially, what we want to do is we don't want to wait till the very end for these buses to get, or for these OEMs to get payments, and being able to pay them earlier in the construction phase of the buses will help in terms of the financial impact for those OEMs. Next slide. This is also new for 2025, the benefits for families and communities. This was a part of the directive of an executive order for Department of Transportation. As FTA is part of the Department of Transportation, the FTA will prioritize projects that improve the accessibility of transportation to families with young children, including improved access to jobs, healthcare, recreation, and commercial activity, and that improve quality of life and raise the standard of living. So you need to ensure that you incorporate that into your application. Next slide, please. And finally, I think finally of the additional considerations, Buy America. Uh, Traditionally in the past, we had Buy America waivers. I would not, if I'm an applicant, I'm not going to be asking for a Buy America waiver. You have to assume, and this is in the NOFO, that those waivers will not be granted. So you need to assure in your application that your project will not request a waiver of any domestic preference requirement, and understand that if you do ask for a waiver, one, it may not be granted, and two, it will receive a lower priority than those that make a commitment for Buy America. Next slide. This is not in the additional considerations, but I do want to bring it up. These are more initiatives given or aligning with the priorities of the current administration. DOT Order 21007 is going to apply when evaluating applications. That is ensuring reliance upon sound economic analysis for all Department of Transportation policies and programs. So there's going to be a rigorous cost-benefit analysis to make sure that what we're spending in our project is going to strengthen the U.S. economy and serve the American public in some form or way. So just to make sure, when you're writing out your budget, you need to make sure that there is a benefit to all of this, and making sure that you include that in your narratives. Next slide. So I do want to talk about just other considerations. In the upper left-hand corner, there is issued as a joint solicitation, so you can have multiple applications. You can have multiple applications with the Lono program and the Bus and Bus Facilities competitive programs. So you can submit twice, you can submit 3 times. One thing that I would strongly consider is that if you are doing that, make sure that those projects are mutually exclusive. And what I mean by that is, if you're going the electric busway and you put electric school bus vehicles, it's not school bus, sorry, transit vehicles in your application, in one application, and then you put your chargers in the other application, and then you only win one of them, well, you're not going to have chargers, or you're not going to have your buses. So let's try and make sure that everything that deserves to be in one application is in one application. There is a partner provision for Lono. If the project partner is named in your applications, for example, an OEM that maybe you have used previously, your project is deemed to satisfy competitive procurement requirements. If you do not name a project application, you still have to follow Title II CFR 200, where you've got to have a procurement process that is competitive. There's also a workforce development component, which I hope to hear from our transit agencies in the near future, of up to 0.5% of of requested funding can go to workforce development activities, which you can see here. And then for zero emission buses, for buses and facilities, 5% of the requested federal award must be used for workforce development unless the applicant explains for some reason why less funding is needed. Next slide. So that was a lot of information. I did get it done in like 15 minutes. That's wonderful. Here are some QR codes that will help you in terms of writing your application. The first one is off to the left-hand side, is super helpful. There's an FAQ. There's a lot of questions on there that they answer. So I recommend going to that page just to get some of your questions answered. If not, hopefully we can answer them on this session here. The NOFO, I think, has already been put in I think the FAQ and the NOFO have already been included into the chat session. And then there was also an FTA webinar last week where they go over this, in general. Again, they can answer some questions. They're not able to answer every question. If you do want to watch the recording, I think it's about an hour and a half, and it is password protected, so that password in the bottom right-hand corner will be of very much help. Next slide. So to broadly find out where all of this information is at, you need to go to grants.gov. The opportunity IDs are in the upper left-hand corner for both the Lono and Bus and Bus Facilities program. If you do have any questions that you want to directly ask the Department of Transportation, you can use the email address in the lower left-hand corner. Again, I talked about the 72 hours prior to, but there is a July 14th deadline. So we have about a month to get this application in. That is more than enough time. So if you haven't started and you are still thinking about this, there is time to get that done. It is not, it is an application that is far easier than other grant programs. And then, and then, I just want to throw out there, the Electrification Coalition is always there to support our transportation agencies and any federal funding that they're going after. So if you do need any advice, if you need any help, if you need someone to review a particular part of your application, we are always there to help you. I think my information will be at the very end of this presentation. But my name is Brant Hertenstein. It's B Hertenstein at electrificationcoalition.org, and always happy to help.
Brant, thank you for that very helpful information and sharing it so efficiently with all of us today. We'd now like to open up today's session for some Q&A from all of you who are participating with us today. Please insert your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. And as you're thinking about your questions for Brant, I want to highlight for all of you another link that's in the chat, and this is to our new step-by-step application guide for the low and no emissions grant program. So please take a look for that, which we just posted right now. Brant, we'll start with a question we've gotten, but everyone, please post any additional questions you may have. So Brant, what would you recommend for a city that has applied and received funding in previous years and would like to reapply? Are any strategies for what they should be prioritizing, especially when it comes to the priorities you just mentioned?
So, I mean, the first thing that I would do is I would look to see what I was graded on the last time I applied. So there's, highly qualified applications, and unqualified applications. The first thing that I would do is determine where I was in the application process. If you don't have that information, I would be looking to see what I can do to enhance. I think a great start is probably going to ask some of our cities and transit agencies that are on the call today to sort of talk about them, what stood out in their application that might have pushed them over the top. I think using that application from the previous years is probably a good start because again, the evaluation criteria are similar. However, I would highly focus on the things that the new administration is prioritizing. Again, the community benefits of it all. There still is greenhouse gas reductions. So we are still talking about some of the same terminology that we've been a little bit hesitant to use prior in the last couple of months. But you do need to talk about greenhouse gas emissions. You do need to talk about how it's going to serve your community and in the best way that it can. And I would just make sure that when I'm going through the NOFO, I'm making a checklist of everything that I see. Oftentimes when I look at programs and programs that have come out, I look at all the musts. So I think I looked at it today and there was like 52 musts in the NOFO. So I'm making sure that anything that is must be in the application is in the application.
Great. And for those cities and towns that haven't applied for these funds in the past, you mentioned that I think project design is not an eligible activity for these funds. What would you recommend for cities that haven't gone through this process that would need to put together that project design and fund it?
So, with this, and I think what you're, trying to set yourself up, hopefully, is for the funding that may be there next year. And so, again, I still think I'm hoping that there's still going to be over $1 billion of funding next year. It should be increasing pretty much every year, minus administrative costs. But I would be getting a plan together. So the first thing that I would be doing is working on the zero emission fleet transportation electrification plan. I think that kind of starts everything for you. So it gives you a plan of what you need to do to proceed in the future. And then, it'll give you a rundown of, what your transit agency's goals are. What are their priorities? I think another thing that also needs to be completely understood is there's a 3-year project period of performance, but they want these done within the year, within the first fiscal year. So September 2025 is when these are most likely going to be out and awarded. make sure that you, when you have a project idea, that you know exactly what you're going after, so that you can get that project on the ground as quickly as possible. And it's not just for FTA Lono, it's for really any project. We want to get these projects in the ground. We've seen some hesitancy in the previous years. We want to make sure that we get projects in the ground. So getting all of your ducks in order. If you want to work with a OEM, we talked about, yeah, Jamie said DOT has said they are favoring shovel-ready projects. Shovel-ready projects are the way to go. So being able to talk about get your plan ready and talking about how you're going to execute is going to set you up favorably for funding in the future.
Great. And Brent, we have another question. If you don't partner with a vendor for low, no, do you think that weakens the application?
My personal opinion, I think it slightly weakens it. I think we're going to go back again to getting shovel-ready projects in the ground. So if you have a vendor that you're already working with and already know about it, and it doesn't mean that you can't come up with a partner within the next month. You can still do that. You can still come up with it because you need that letter of commitment from the vendor in the first place. So being able to start talking to vendors, American-made vendors, so you don't have to go after, Buy America waivers is going to really, I think it's going to help because again, we're talking about trying to get these shovel-ready projects as quickly as possible in the ground. And so, do I think it's going to weaken it? Probably slightly. I think they'll include it in the evaluation period or in the evaluation criteria. But if you're really strong other places, then it might not affect it.
Great. And one last question. You mentioned that the Buy America priority is pretty much an absolute priority. So an obvious question is, are there enough American-made buses out there for quick procurement? And what can you say about the timeline for procuring them and possible cost implications?
Yeah, and I think this was in the previous NOFO as well, and I think keeping it in this NOFO makes a ton of sense. I mean, I think we've all heard like what kind of happened with Proterra and it going bankrupt, and we don't really want this to happen again. I think that's why you put in the advance or progressive payments so that you have the amount of money that they can build these without having to wait on the funding coming open. So what you really want to do is articulate in your application that you have a commitment to advance payments or progressive payments so that they can continue building and having the capital in order to do so, so that we don't run into this problem again. I think, I mean, it's my assumption that is why that this is in there, and I think it's a really good idea. We need to make sure that we're not sitting on money while we have these full customization vehicles that take a really long time and just sitting there waiting, for further customization. We want more standardization in our fleets, and we want to be able to spend capital quicker.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone for the great questions. Brant, thanks for the responses. I'll now hand it back to you to introduce our city leaders panel.
All right. Thank you so much. So we are going to pivot over to the real stars of our show, our previous awardees of the FTA Lono and Bus Facilities Grant. We have about 20 minutes or so to go over their awarded projects and I'll guide that conversation with questions. After that, we will have a brief amount of time where we'll take audience questions. I'm going to start first with my Wisconsin connection. I am in Madison, Wisconsin right now. We have Green Bay on the call. Patty Kiwiz is the director of Green Bay Metro Transit. Patty, thanks for joining us today. Could you talk a little bit about your application and your awarded project?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for inviting me to participate. So we actually were awarded in the last round for the Lono, and that was our first time. I've been here about 20 years, so that's the first time we've applied and were awarded. So we actually did partner with a local vendor, or I should say an existing vendor of ours. So we actually partnered with Gillig, who our fleet is pretty much all Gillig. So that I found to be very beneficial for us. As we worked with, getting their commitment, they also had a third party that they brought on board that really helped out a lot with getting things together and, hitting a lot of those target points. So that was great. So I think, that's, as one of the questions came up about, having a vendor ahead of time, I think it's helpful, because of course they have the expertise and a lot of that information through. So that was very good. We were awarded, we applied for two along with quite a bit of infrastructure. And so we were awarded for everything we applied for. So we had done the Lono and the 5339.
Great. Just a couple of questions to follow up. How many did you say how many buses you had?
So with the Lono, we have 2 that were coming. We did do a lot on the infrastructure side, only because in Wisconsin, we also had a round of VW mitigation. So we have 3 buses coming from that as well. So.
Gotcha. VW, Volkswagen still have mitigation. Some of your states may still have them, may not, depending on how quickly your states were able to allocate that funding. You talked about having 2 buses, and then some of the things that maybe you saw in that 2024 round of funding. Is there anything that stood out to you in terms of your application that you would recommend or say to people, this I think put us over the top?
I think really pushing, we had a zero fleet emission plan. The city did a whole clean energy plan about maybe 2 years prior, and then Metro, we had done our zero emission as well. So that I think absolutely, you need that. I think that was really critical having all of that laid out. But I also think, we focused a lot on the workforce development and making sure that staff was trained and all of those pieces with, first responder training and infrastructure and all of that. And I think that workforce development, I think, played a huge piece of that, because I think there was a big stress and a big push on that piece in this last round.
Gotcha. I am probably going to come up and ask you more about workforce development in the future, but we will talk to next Robert Smith, the Director of Planning for Montgomery, Alabama, and their award. Thanks for being with us today, Robert. Can you give us an overview of your project?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Brant, and thanks for the invite. Of course, I'm here for the mayor of the city of Montgomery, Stephen L. Reed, and so our project that we were awarded last year, we applied for the Low-No, but we were awarded the bus and bus facilities grant. And our grant dollar amount was $16,941,377. And basically we had a scaled up version, which was more like 25, 26 million. Then we had a scaled down version. If, let's say, if there wasn't enough money to fully award us what we wanted, we had a secondary dollar amount, and the secondary dollar amount was what they awarded us, and they awarded us under the bus and bus facilities program. And what that will get us is 8 all-electric buses, and complementary comparable electric charging infrastructure for all 8. Also, we had a workforce development component in that, where we're basically going to where we're partnering with the local community college to train the automotive mechanical program students to be able to work on all electric buses when there's a need in the area, or to eventually employ some of those students to be mechanics at the transit system. Our vendor partner is Gillig. We are previous winners, and of course this actually made our 3rd time applying, and out of the last couple of cycles, and we did win last cycle. And back in 2012, we were winners of this was an older grant program called Tigger, Tigger, where in 2012 we won an FTA grant, and we bought 12 hybrid electric diesel buses that are at the point now of past their useful lives in years and miles. And so these 8 buses that we will get will replace those. And we also have another partner, an engineering firm that's going to partner with us to help us with the engineering work that's going to be needed for the electric bus charging infrastructure. And that's a brief overview of our project.
I appreciate that. Patty talked about how she was a first timer, and you said that you've done this since 2012. Did you apply in between those 2 years?
Yeah, we did. We applied several times. Just never were we were never awarded anymore, and until 2024. And like I said, of course, the program had changed a good little bit, and this made our third time applying. I guess this would have been under the Biden administration because they were there for 4 years. So the third time ended up being the charm.
Beautiful. And I think that goes back to one of the questions that I had asked me of, what should we do if we didn't win last year? So I remember last year when we did this call, I think it was the city of Jacksonville applied every single year and they won it almost every other year. So uh,
Right,
I would highly recommend that if maybe didn't get it last year, you can go after it again. We talked about some of those additional considerations of geographic diversity and the size of your transit. Just because you didn't win last year doesn't mean you didn't have a good application, but
right,
you might be able to take that same application, apply some new priorities to it based on the current administration, and win this year. So
right.
we've got a first timer with the city of Green Bay. We've had a few applications by the city of Montgomery, Alabama. We'll bring in Rusty Korth, who is the Vice President of Zero Emission Strategies for Rochester, New York's Regional Transit Service. Can you go over your project overview, and then you can also talk about your history involved with FTA Lono Grant?
Sure. Good afternoon. So we have about 200 buses in our fixed route fleet. We won a CMAQ grant and a Lono grant back in 2017 and 18. And that coupled with the VW settlement money basically provided us funding to put 20 battery electric buses in service, the first 10 in 2020, and then the second 10 in 2022. Right after we put the first 10 in service, we realized that scaling battery electric technology across 100% of the fleet would not work. So we basically started investigating hydrogen fuel cell, and we were awarded a CMAQ grant for $5 million in 2022 that covered the cost of 2 fuel cell buses, a portable fueler, and 5 fuel cell vans. And we also won a $7 million Lono grant. And then that grant, we partnered with Eldorado, and that was to cover 3 fuel cell buses and also a portable fueler. You kind of made the analogy earlier about, applying for a bus in one grant and chargers in another. And in our case, we had to apply for a fueler in both of them, but we actually got awarded both grants. So now we have a little bit of extra funding that I have some ideas on how to use. So 2023, we applied for a Lono grant for a permanent hydrogen fueling station, did not get it. We partnered with Trillium for that one. 2024, we were awarded a $5 million CMAQ grant that covered the cost of 4 fuel cell buses. And then we also were awarded a $18.1 million bus and bus facility grant, and that covered construction costs that are necessary for our operations building. Again, maintaining fuel cell buses has an implication on your building codes. So we basically have to make a bunch of upgrades to that building. And it also included 3 fuel cell buses. So that was a strategy we used for that application to try to make it more attractive by including an immediate greenhouse gas reduction, given that we already had a fueler in place. So I think that kind of helped our application that time. We also, at the same time, basically re-rolled our Lono application for the permanent fueling station and reapplied, and again, did not get awarded for that. So right now we have 2 fuel cell buses in service, a portable fueler in service, 10 fuel cell buses on order. They go into production beginning of September, and they'll be delivered at the end of the year.
That's great. That's great to hear. I'm going to actually go right back to you, Rusty. We'll go in reverse order. I think everyone won a 2024 grant from FTA Lono or the Bus and Bus Facilities Grant. Can you talk about what your current status looks like? How has the first year gone? I think Lono came out in February of 24 last year, and so it was probably awarded somewhere around this time. And so you've had about a full year of a performance period. We talked about shovel-ready projects. We've talked about having a plan to get these obligated as quickly as possible. Can you go into detail of what the status is and what you've kind of endured over the past year?
So we were pretty much ready to go with the grants that we got. The challenge is, again, we'll probably reapply for a permanent hydrogen fueling station, but for us, we don't have the campus space for it. So we're going to have to do a campus expansion first. So the shovel-ready aspect, is questionable, I guess, is if you count the campus expansion as part of the project actually hitting the ground running, we would be ready. But if it's primarily to build a permanent fueling station, we're not ready. So.
Gotcha. All right, Robert, same question. What has come about with your project over the past year, and is there any learning experiences that you could share with the group?
Well, I mean, the only challenge that we've seen so far is really trying to get the grant executed through the FTA process. Um, and I guess with the current administration, there has been some questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion. That type of information being inserted into the grants that I guess there were questions about that that I think the administration was not favorable of. And so we've been in the process of working directly with FTA in taking some information out of those grants so that we don't get that particular grant taken away or defunded. And we've complied with what they wanted us to comply with, and we're just really waiting to execute the grant because I think that's the biggest challenge right now. We don't want to go and commit money to buy buses, and the grant ends up being defunded, and so that's really the biggest challenge right now at this point. But I think we're headed in a direction of where we're going to be able to execute. So we've got a little more confidence now than what we had, but we would have more confidence if we can go ahead and execute the actual grant agreement between the city of Montgomery and the FTA in our case. And so that's really our only holdup because we've done this before, so it's not hard. As soon as we execute, we'll go ahead and put our order in with Gillig and get started on the electrical engineering with our engineering consultant, and be ready to receive the new buses, have the electric vehicle charging infrastructure in place, and also execute the job training program. But we're just kind of in a bit of a holding pattern until we execute.
And I really appreciate you bringing that up, Robert. Obviously, the last several months, there's been a lot of uncertainty, especially with DOT grants. As Jamie alluded to in the chat, I just want to point to that directly. If any cities need support revising their grants to align to administration priorities, please let us know. Jamie has graciously put her email in the chat, so please reach out. Work with Bloomberg on any sort of revision that needs to happen. Robert, just one quick follow-up question to that. Do you have a finalized contract with FTA? And
Yes.
You have a finalized contract, and now they're asking to amend some of the things in your application to align with administration priorities. Is that correct?
Yes. So they ask us, they communicated to us to do that. We have done that and complied with that. And now we're just waiting to execute the grant agreement or the contract with the FTA.
Okay, appreciate it. Yeah. Again, with the change in administrations, there are going to be administration priority changes. This is not new, and so it's great to hear. It's great to hear that you're still complying and you're still having contact with your FTA. all things that are really important as you execute and fulfill a contract.
Right, right,
Patty,
right.
same. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
Can I just
Robert.
can I just add this last very important piece? And um, and it's unfortunate that um, there have been cuts in employees um, across the federal government, but in particular, there have been cuts in employees at the FTA, and because of those cuts, it's also taken longer to get grant agreements executed as well. Just FYI, I'm assuming that the other awardees are probably going through the same thing. So just wanted to bring that out right there.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Patty, question, same for you. Just current status. What have you gone through in the past year? What can you shed some light on that hopefully can help people whenever they are entering their award agreements and things like that?
So actually, we are in the same boat. We're waiting to execute our grant as well. They actually just came back with a couple of questions just on status of project this week. But we've been kind of in a holding pattern for about 5 months waiting. And again, I think the changes in the number of staff has really played a lot into that. So we are just waiting to execute. Normally we would move along. However, just given the temperature out there, we just did not want to get into a position of moving forward and then something happened with the grant. So we're excited to keep moving on that. We had another electric bus delivered earlier this year, our first electric bus with some other funds. So and we have the charging stations and things like that in place for that already. So we're just waiting to get to get this executed for us to move forward. I think a good summary from my perspective is if you're able to partner with vendors ahead of time, I really do think that that's helpful, especially if it is your first time going through the process or having to tweak prior applications that weren't successful. We really tried to have as many partners as we could prior to. So,
Patty, do you quickly want to go over how you partnered with Gillig? I think you said Gillig was your vendor. Do you want to quickly go over that just to give the audience an understanding of what does that look like and what sort of timeline did you have?
So we did it pretty quickly, actually. So we partnered with Gillig. Gillig had brought on CTE on their end to assist with putting everything together. So they really provided a lot of analytical and a lot of support with that grant preparation, which was really nice. So we partnered with Gillig as the vendor, of course, and then we partnered on the whole infrastructure piece with charge points. We had commitment letters from them, as well as CTE on the for the project management and technical support behind the scenes. And I think, it's a lot of experience, with those three alone. So I think that, with the experience that they have with prior grants, they were really able to help us focus on what they felt were key components and important pieces to make sure that we were hitting on doing those grants.
That's all really helpful. Thank you. All right, I have one more question for the group. Before we get into that question, I do believe we have one additional poll that we'd like to throw out there. So before we get into that final question, please, there is now a 4-question poll, sorry, on the front of your screen. If you could answer those, that would be greatly appreciative. Want to hear how you felt today about the webinar and what we can do to improve on it. And if you need any help in preparing your application, that's absolutely important, and we're there to provide support in whatever way that we can. While you guys are filling those out, Patty, I'm going to come back to you. You talked a little bit, this is about workforce development. Want to hear a little bit about how you incorporated that into your application and what sort of, I brought this up before, but like what kind of put it over the top, or what do you think stood out to the reviewers as you were writing and submitting your workforce development portion of your application?
I think from, working with the partners that, we partnered with Gilligan CT, I think CTE, there was a lot of discussion on the fact with the previous administration on the big focus on that workforce development. So I think involving labor and involving a lot of the staff in those things on that training, I think was really beneficial. I think that there was a big focus on that. We had considerable training put in there from Gillig on various levels for different employees, on all different aspects, a lot of PPE and a lot of various training aids and components and things like that. And I think that, you know, as we read through and went through everything, that there was I think a big push on the fact of involving employees and getting the buy-in all the way around and making sure folks were comfortable. I mean, it's a big change, especially when you're just moving to that electric component, a little bit different from a diesel. So I think, there was a lot of training that we really needed to be able to get everybody and to get all that buy-in. And I think we really stressed on that part. So I think that was really beneficial.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Robert, I'm going to move over to you. You did talk about how you were working with your community college. Again, we're bringing the workforce development component into this because for zero emission projects, 5% of that funding needs to go to workforce development unless you have a good reason not to. Let's talk about all the good reasons to include workforce development. There's certainly a need across the board for workforce development for electric vehicles, electric vehicle infrastructure. Is there any more that you can shed some light on in terms of the workforce development that you incorporated into your project?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest component is having good mechanics that are able to work on the electric vehicles. And I mean, we don't have any right now that are trained to be able to do that. So if something goes wrong with it, the vehicles will likely have to be shipped back to the manufacturer if there's something that can't be repaired on site, or manufacturer would have to send someone from the manufacturing facility to repair or fix on vehicles. So it's very important to us on the workforce development side to get local students trained on electric vehicles so that they can maintain and repair as needed when needed.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Rusty, I'm going to end with you. Workforce development component on hydrogen buses, right? Maybe a little bit different. Do you want to share your perspective on it?
So for our 2022 low-no, we requested the full 5%. Most of that money is obligated to New Flyer for providing training to our technicians. I think one thing that made our workforce development part of the application attractive is we have a very good working relationship with our union. We've been in discussions for the last 2 years, and we're right on the cusp of launching an apprenticeship program. And we also have an onboard technical trainer. And this is a continuation of training that we've been providing similar to our battery electric buses. So a fuel cell bus is also a battery electric bus. So all of the training that we've developed for our battery electric buses directly applies to training on the hydrogen fuel cell buses. All you're doing is adding the fuel cell and hydrogen storage. So the other thing is that it's very important to get that funding, because when you're only starting out with a few buses and it's a small percentage of your fleet, you can train all of your technicians on some of this stuff, but if they're not working on the buses every day, they're going to forget about it. So the workforce transition to zero emission, it's a gradual one. It's an iterative process. You got to train folks. Right now, our training plan is to do the same training with Ballard and New Flyer on the fuel cell powertrain. We'll do it every summer for the next 3 years. And then as we go from 2 buses to 12 buses to 22 buses, there will be more opportunities for the technicians to work on the buses, and then they'll start to retain that knowledge and actually, develop their skill sets. So it's a gradual transition with your workforce, just as like it's a gradual transition with your fleet.
Yeah, I mean, thank you everyone for talking about the workforce development. Again, I think it's a really important component of it. We've been hearing, just from other cities across the country how important it is to have workforce development and where there's a lack of funding. And so here's an opportunity where you can have up to 5% mandatory of your funding going to workforce development. You talked, our speakers today talked about all the ways that they are utilizing this funding. And so it's really important that you can get some of these ideas that the city of Green Bay, Montgomery, and Rochester has used to incorporate into your own application. And so hopefully it writes itself based on some of the answers that we've gotten through today. I know that my time is ending very soon. I really appreciate Patty, Robert, and Rusty joining the call. I am going to pass it over to David to finish up for the rest of the webinar.
Great. Thank you, Brant. I know that we had a few more questions, and we'll make sure to provide answers to all of you after this session. Want to thank you all for participating today. We have two important announcements before we conclude. First, we want to note for all of you that the Electrification Coalition has a great new resource on 10 key takeaways from the 2025 NOLO NOFO, which you can find in the chat along with the other materials we've been sharing throughout the day. And also, a fun fact, next Friday at 9 a.m., we'll be hosting a local infrastructure hub session on strategies for adapting to evolving federal infrastructure programs at the U.S. Conference of Mayors annual meeting in Tampa, Florida. So next Friday at 9 a.m. in Tampa. And during that same meeting, we'll also be hosting one-on-one office hours for local government leaders like all of you, and sponsoring a booth in the convention space as well. So everything we've discussed today, everything we've talked about at our previous sessions, you can find on our website, localinfrastructure.org. And so we thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Jamie?
Yeah, I know we had two questions in the chat, so I just want to quickly, since we have few minutes left. Let's try to get some answers to those if that's okay. Brant, you're doing
please.
more duty. One is, do the bus facilities have to be publicly accessible?
The bus facilities have to serve publicly accessible places. So if you are in a fixed route, publicly accessible location, think about where you kind of straddle the lines. Maybe it's like on a university setting where you have students using the bus to move around, your city. But if it's publicly available, then you can use it. If it's only for the students, that's where it's not available. So it has to be publicly accessible in terms of the people that it is offered to. If it does fall into a small subsection, that's where it may become ineligible.
And Jairus, if you have a follow-up question, please feel free to come off mute and ask it. And then Katie Pavel asked, with the new administration's priorities focusing less on climate and the environment, will diesel buses under the bus program be more competitive?
So with the bus and bus facilities program, it is all fuel types are considered. Do I think that there will be more of a focus on the diesel buses? I think it all stems down to how you answer the questions of how it improves mobility, how it modernizes. To me, and this is again probably more personally, diesel isn't modernizing. The low emission, no emission vehicles are much more modern. This is where we're hopefully headed toward. And so being able to answer that question on how it modernizes, I'm not totally sure that it's going to be more competitive, but it is an option. And I think it's important to be able to understand that it does incorporate all fuel types for transit.
Yeah, I'll just say when I've heard the secretary and their staff talk about the administration's priorities, they have talked about technology a lot and innovation. And so just underlining Brant's point that if you are moving towards sort of 21st century technology, whether that's low or no emission vehicles, just really like underlining that modernization and innovation technology point. To show that it's in line with the secretary and how the administration's been thinking about it. Great. Thanks for coming back and just answering a few more. Just maybe one last question. You know, the opportunity zones are sort of back again. They're not new, but they're back again. How does that line up versus, for instance, if a city was prioritizing Justice 40 before?
Yeah, so I haven't gone into the opportunity zones versus the disadvantaged communities that we saw in the Biden administration. We had the CJUST tool, that's what I call it, the Climate Justice Initiative tool, where it spelled it out. The census tract, I would imagine, covers similar areas, but you do want to make sure that you look and follow the rules and the links on the NOFO to determine where those performances are, so that you can incorporate them. And I would include as many census tracts as you possibly can, because it makes it for a stronger application.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, David.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you.